It's still raw. City 3, United nil. A couple of positives that we've touched upon, but obviously it's an overwhelmingly negative afternoon. Um, why did it happen? Why did it unfold, in your opinion, the way that it unfolded?
You can go really deep with this. You can talk about, where Manchester United is as a football club. We can talk about the numerous kind of board decisions made in the summer, the changes over the last kind of 3, 4 seasons at the board level. And often we talk about the culture of the club influencing what's happening on the pitch. So
Yeah.
yes, there's some of that going on, and I'll leave that for yourself and for other um, kind of people to discuss that at length. I think what I'm looking at is in terms of what Amarim's doing every game and in sequences of games, and you kind of break it down instead of culture manager players, you break it down as system. Been lots of talk, obviously, about his favoured system, selections within that system, and then the players and are they capable to perform the principles within that system. So that's the kind of where we've been looking at it on this channel so far. So when you look at that tonight, there's some right things, don't get me wrong, and we've said before, who are we to question a wonderfully qualified coach, but there's some things that are obviously glaringly obviously bad, and that's a worry for United and United fans at the moment. Let's take system. So we know he's going to play 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1. So that's a given. We know he's rigid in that. Um, I would argue, like in pre-season, there was a game there to try the 4-3-3, and I'll still talk about that. So it's not about changing his system in the long term; it's about adapting. I thought that the game today was the perfect opportunity to do that. You've got form players in Casemiro not starting, who could have been the kind of defensive central midfielder there, with a Kobe or a Fernandez to the side, and you can build on that. So there's the first thing, system. But we know he's not going to change. So we talk about principles of the system. We talked earlier about the start of each half being positive. There's there's positive ideas in the build. We're moving the ball forward in I don't know, succinct phases of play, for want of a better phrase, and we're trying to work the ball into the final third, and then we're looking for solutions. Then all of a sudden that goes out the window and the game becomes stretched. And again, that's not always when we're losing. I know Neville said something about that recently, about when we're losing, the pitch becomes big. There's a big gap between our back three, or often a back five, if we play 5-4-1 like we did out of possession this evening, and the forward line. So this happens time and time again. So there's got to be some question mark about his principles within that system. Now, I'm totally with him in his post-match speech, by the way, that, that's not all on the midfield. That's not all on the midfield. If you've got, Bruno and one other um, today that happened to be Ugarte, there should be enough in the system with a Shaw or a Yoro jumping from wide centre back positions. There should be enough with a typically Cunha and Mbumo coming dropping in, Mount, who's been one of our form players, creating a three-man centre. But the problem tonight was the selection and the players performing to those principles. And that's the problem. So if you're going to take system out of the way, the problem we had tonight or this evening was that the principles behind that were just not comfortable at any time, aside from the start of both halves, and that for me is just a real worry. The system was crying out for Bruno at left 10. So again, slight contradiction that it should be able to accommodate Bruno in central midfield, but when you play in the biggest team in the Premier League for the last 10 years, let's say, in terms of success, and you're going away to the Etihad, you've got to apply some logic, not necessarily caution, but you've got to apply a bit more logic. You know that Pep Guardiola is going to try and overload that midfield. Interesting in how he did that with the 4-1-4-1, and Doku, coming inside, and Foden pushing on to one of our centre backs, trying to stop the two wide centre backs getting out with Reinders. But you've got to kind of, even if you don't know the exact formation Pep's going to play, you've got to kind of predict some of that. Casemiro's dropped. He's been one of our form players of not just the last three games, but the last 6 months. His direct balls over to Mbumo, into the channel for Ahmad, into the channel for Cunha have been superb this season. He's then put in Ugarte. And again, on balance, you're trying to be balanced. He's not a bad player. He's not as bad as everybody's making out, but he certainly isn't ready for City away. You look at his past few games, you look at his preseason, he's not at the races. So he shouldn't be starting that game. And they're just simple decisions. Like it sounds ridiculous, but they are just simple decisions. He's then involved in each of the three goals, which I only saw a little bit of analysis from the Sky Sports team, but that they've not mentioned that once. It's all been about Luke Shaw. Well, Ugarte is involved in the first one because Doku comes behind him and he's in the space where just one quick look over the shoulders, he blocks that passing channel and then obviously drops a bit further. He's then got back in, and yes, he's unlucky with a double hit. I understand that Doku's got really lucky, but Ugarte should be seeing that danger away. The second goal, it's a dreadful pass into Luke Shaw just beyond the halfway line. And then, of course, all the analysis then discusses Luke giving a terrible pass to Maguire. And then, yeah, it's a horror show. But Ugarte, if you look at that pass, it's to the wrong foot, it's the wrong pace, and it's the wrong decision to pass to Luke Shaw in the first place. And then you look at the other goal as well. Sorry, the second goal. He just too easily. He's come out wide, which he shouldn't be doing. He's going over to the space that's not his. He's then again. There's a bit of luck in the nutmegs on him, but he shouldn't be there in the first place. There's a moment in the game where Bayern passes an outrageous pass to him, and he miscontrols it, and they have a chance where Haaland's through, and you'll remember he then ends up having another shot, and it makes delay and hits the post. So playing Ugarte has caused all those issues, not called all the main issues in the macro for United, but he's caused those specific issues which have allowed us to concede or nearly concede. And finally, you've got Bayern. I mean, there's no words to discuss that selection. You talk all summer about needing the goalkeeper. You and I discussed the pros and cons of Onana. It certainly is, again, isn't as terrible as everyone makes out. But once he's then sent on his way to Turkey, and you've put your faith in Lamens over Martinez, he has to start that game. He has to start that game. Who starts in goal for City?
I mean,
Donnarumma.
there's obviously a bit of a difference in the experience scale, isn't it? Obviously Donnarumma's European champion with club
Yep.
and country. He's I think he's cast his vote with the signing, hasn't he? He's tried to play it cautious. Give him a couple of weeks
Yeah.
of or at least a week of proper training with the full squad. Now everyone's back from the
Yeah.
internationals.
Like he did with Sesko. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I probably sound like I'm making excuses here, and believe me when I say that I really wanted to see. I am desperately looking forward to seeing what he can do, how he can, because I think having a top class goalkeeper in there alleviates the whole team.
Yeah.
And for me, sooner rather than later, that would have been the case. But it's gone that way, and I would be shocked if he wasn't involved in it from the start against Chelsea.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? We now don't know who will play, and again, we might discuss substitutions a little later and what's happening there as well. But yeah, and not everyone will agree with that point, but I think you know, that's the viewpoint I have. When you see his distribution, at one point he's put Ugarte in tremendous trouble, and he's
Mm.
tried to pass through the narrows, the eye of a needle as Haaland's pressing him. And there's one where he controls it, and it goes about eight yards, and they nearly score from it in the first half. That was a really worrying moment where it just shouldn't happen at this level. And there's obviously the Arsenal game where, and the Fulham game where it's four corners in a period of 15 minutes where every single one he's looked vulnerable. So I'm not saying Le Mans is going to be the new Schmeichel and come in straight away and dominate proceedings. And but by any stretch, I'm not saying that, to be fair. But what I'm saying is there's levels of player.
So you mentioned the principles of play under Amarim there. When it's all working, when it's all fit and firing, what does that look like? What are those principles in action?
Yeah, so there's again a lot of discussion about this 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1, but it's about the principles within that. And I think when he first came along, we're talking about a possession-based game that Amrim mostly did in Portugal. There were times, obviously, when he's gone direct. I understand that, but we're talking about a build up from the back. We've got specific build up patterns with the inverted centre back when the goalkeeper is playing out. We've got the other two wide centre backs go left and right, and then we involve the wing backs and we come inside of them, we go. So the talk of Amorim was how, beautiful he plays, and how, that's the benefit of a 3-5-2 blueprint in a sense, but 3-4-3. And then obviously you've got the 5-3-2 or the 4-4-2 at times out of possession. But what's worrying is what we said at the start of this discussion is that very quickly that breaks down, and then there is a big heavy onus on direct play. So then you kind of ask, well, who are the players playing in that direct play? So if we're going to go direct at City, why isn't Casemiro starting? Ugarte isn't renowned for his long range passing. So, why is that player playing? Why isn't Bruno gone left? So we know that his balls in are absolutely fantastic. We know that Sesko thrives off crosses, and we know that his movement in and around the 6 yard box is fantastic. Why then are we looking to keep and Mbeumo coming dropping in? So if you look at Arsenal, and Mbeumo's asked to stay high. Today we see Mbeumo coming in, and he's just not getting into the game. And if I'm being totally honest, it would have been a discussion at half time. What do we do with Mbeumo? And then looking first 10, 15 minutes in the second half, and he just doesn't get it together, which is summarized quite neatly by his miss right near the end from 2 to 3 yards. Obviously, he's had the one great shot that Donnarumma's palmed away, and that was good. But just some of his decision making, volume when the balls come from 50 yards in the air, and trying to cut in to shoot. So you've then got to ask, what are the principles then if he then chooses Fernandez and Ugarte? And I just don't think tonight's play, stretching the play after that 20-minute period, was working towards the player's strengths. You could say we had the Mbeumo chance that we've just mentioned. Ahmad gets in. There's a times where Bruno turns Reinders, and he's looking at a 3-on-3 scenario in front of him. Could he have played it, in behind for Ahmad? Instead, he chooses to go wide to Dorgu, and then we have, a reasonable chance from that approach. So those things aside, there's nothing really that's standing out where you've got, chances galore, or the XG is high. So I had a quick look at the XG as usual. It was about 0.29 prior to City's third goal. It's
Yeah.
only then it starts to go higher, because that's, obviously that's game states, right? So that as we're chasing the game, the XG is going to go higher. Hopefully, you're going to get more shots on goal. And then, yeah, so the statistics at the end where you've got 5%, 55 to 45 possession, same or similar XG to City. They're kind of like a misnomer in a sense, because that's the game state principle, like we discussed with the Arsenal game where there was lots of positivity, don't get me wrong, but Arteta purposely sits back in the low block, and we've got to go and attack in waves, as it was at times against Arsenal. But that's the kind of the game state talking. And then finally, it's just the way I was looking at it this evening against City. You look at Pep and you look at Amorim's approach. One's playing chess and the other one's playing battleships, and I think that for me was, in my mind, a good summary of today's game, because you've got City, looking at the fact that if he plays 4-1-4-1, just by creating that extra line with Rodri deep, he knows he can get three midfielders behind our two centre mid double pivot. He knows that one of them can push on with Haaland, which used to be Cherki or Marmoush before their injury. He knows he can pin the centre backs and then have that space in front of our back line. And, there's lots of thinking gone into it. There's a chess mentality. And you look at Amrim, and this isn't meant as a total negative at all, but he is playing battleships. It's like lining up, bang, let's fire and let's go for it. Let's go for if we get this big, diagonal, this long ball stretching the play, we create a 3-on-3 or a 4-on-4 against their back line. And if we score from that, like you said earlier, the game state changes. you've gone 1-0 up at the Etihad, everything changes and it's come off for you. So he kind of plays this high risk. And it's not that he's done that at the Etihad. He's doing it game after game. So Burnley was the same, Arsenal was the same. So it's whether it's home or away. And I think just a little bit more chess, please, Ruben. Just a little bit more thinking. Some of the obvious selection issues, some of the more, nuanced principles, please. If you're not going to put Bruno in his best position at left 10 and put Casemiro and Kobe in, then let's just have some different ways of playing and play to the team's strengths. And yeah, I just don't think, we've seen that today. Well, we haven't. And we're all pretty down about it, aren't we?
Okay, so obviously there's no midweek game, there's just a lot of training. And then next Saturday it's Chelsea at Old Trafford. What do we want to see? What do you want to see, I suppose, in terms of selection and approach?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were saying about the players today as well. It's not just the systems and approach. You want Delit in the scenario we talked of earlier, dropping that extra 5 or 6 yards when Doku has spun and got in behind. And then Haaland has then obviously turn Shaw and beat him to the ball. So you want decision making to be on it. You want to be, players to be thinking about what their role is in the team. And that's just one example. Delit, last couple of games, just not quite at it after the wonderful start he made. Not thinking where he is in relation to his other centre back partners, and that includes the first and second goals. So Yoro, I don't think he had a wonderful game either, despite everybody singing his praises generally. Just that awareness in the penalty area that we touched on in the pre-season review, that's clearly something Euro has to work on. And just putting his foot out again goes back to that simplicity, doesn't it? When Doku is tight against him, you could argue Euro should be a bit further, a bit deeper. But once you are tight, then just put your foot out. If you watch that goal again, Doku manages somehow to spin him with the close control of the football, and that just shouldn't happen. Just put your foot out, and then of course, yeah, talking about how Delit might have helped him afterwards. Ugarte, if he's going to play, I genuinely don't see how he plays against Chelsea. But if he is going to play, it's about being precise with that football, making the right pass, pressing at the right time. Today he was pushing on Rodri on numerous occasions. Now that's either his misunderstanding of the game plan or Amorim has told Ugarte to be the furthest forward midfielder. He was close to Sesko on at least 4 occasions today, where he was the one told to work, the first press on Rodri when Rodri gets the ball from the back line. So is that a Ugarte issue or is it an Amorim instruction? So those are the simple things you'd like to see. But going to Chelsea specific, they're going to, I think Palmer's going to play. I think he'll come in from one of the sides rather than as 10. And he's going to have to be watched because he'll just literally circumvent our midfield too. When you look at what City have done today, Enzo will have a field day if Caicedo's asked to sit in. And Pedro will look to run Delit and Joro as much as he can after watching the City game. And so that is a big worry going into that game. But at the same time, it's probably the right game to get us back into it, isn't it? And it is something Amrim will have to look at and understand how we can get a positive result under our belt because the way things are going, it's going to be very, very tricky. That win percentage can't get much lower than the 25% it's at now. As much as we're fully behind Amorim, it's a case of he needs to get those wins under his belt, and the sooner the better.
Agreed. Nick, thank you very much.